What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with a Q&A video. I received a number of excellent questions from the last subscriber giveaway. One quick note, on Friday I will be doing another giveaway of a vintage collection recent release, so be on the lookout for that one. But thank you everyone who entered, and I received some great questions. I picked out 10 of them, and just to keep the video length down. Before I start, I wanted to say thank you to my latest Patreon supporter, Joshua373 on YouTube. Thank you very much for becoming a Patreon supporter. As I've mentioned countless times, 100% of all money made from being monetized on the YouTube channel and 100% of the Patreon funds go towards growing the channel and for paying for subscriber giveaways. I'm gonna do my best to give away as much as I can, just as Google pays me. Google has not paid me yet, and they probably won't for a while. But as those kind of help from folks like Joshua and Keith Guppy, Technomancer AUS, and Chris W, thank you guys. As those funds help support the channel and help pay for software fees and editing and TubeBuddy. I'm going to do my best to give away as much as I can to you guys. So thank you very much for everyone who supports the channel. But let's go ahead and dig right into the questions. The first question is from my good friend, the Blacked Out Ewoks. He's a fellow YouTuber. He is an awesome dude, and he's really the main reason I probably got on YouTube to begin with. So he came up with a great question. He said, simple question. If you could acquire one 1978 12-back, which character would you desire the most? And that's a fairly easy one. I'd probably go with Darth Vader. I don't have really, the only vintage mint-on card Darth Vader I have is this beautiful example. This is a made in Mexico Lily Letty Darth Vader, one of the very first carded figures that I ever purchased. And I'll just show this really quickly for a lot of the new subscribers who maybe have not seen this yet. But this is the Darth Vader, absolutely gorgeous. It's got that thick tip Letty saber. And this is graded, made in Mexico, graded 85, 90. So just a really nice high-grade example and one of my favorites. But I'd probably, to answer your question directly, BOE, I'd probably pick Darth Vader, or I'd probably pick the Luke Farm Boy. Now, given where prices are these days, I probably will not be buying any 12-backs anytime soon, if ever. It's just beyond what I'd like to spend on a single item. I can't see myself being patient enough to save up for a 12-back because I'm so schizophrenic with my purchases. But I almost purchased last month a beautiful tri-logo AFA 80 plus Darth Vader. But that's probably as far down the rabbit hole as I'm going to go with Darth Vaders. I might get an ESB, but I don't ever see myself spending the kind of money that it costs nowadays to get a high-grade 12-back. It's just the prices these days have just gotten crazy. But that's a great question. But to answer your question, yes, I'd probably go Vader or a nice, beautiful 12-back Luke Farm Boy. The next question comes from Darth Hayabusa. Thank you for watching. His question is, my question, do you have the Lily Letty Yoda from Return of the Jedi? It's one of the most wanted vintage figures from my country. And I assume what he's asking there is, do I have the Lily Letty Returno variant for Yoda? And I do not have that one. There are two different Lily Letty Yodas. There is the Returno that I think he is mentioning, and then there's also the Regresso. The one I have is the Regresso. This is the more common of the two. This is graded by UKG 85s, 90, 85, 85, but that's a beautiful figure that I have there. But this is the more common of the two Lily Lettys. I'll put up a image right now of the Regresso, and in this image on the far right, you will see an item from my friend Dustin B's collection. That one is the PBP Yoda, and that one is often considered by many collectors to be a Lily Letty. A lot of people consider the Lily Letty and the Lily Letty Regresso and the PBP Yoda to be the same. But I kind of side with Dustin on this, that the PBP figure is known for being a much glossier paint scheme. As you can see with my Regresso, the paint on mine is fairly muted. It's kind of a tacky paint and not nearly as glossy as what is shown in that graphic that I'm going to put up right now. On the far right in that graphic is what I consider to be the true PvP figure. It has very glossy paint to Yoda, and then the accessory, the cane, is a much glossier cane than this example. But a lot of collectors consider it to be the same, the Regresso Yoda and the PvP, but really it's a two totally different paint finishes on those. But to answer your question, Darth, no, I do not have the Returno variant. I just have the Regresso, but that's what I have here. It's flanked by a Hong Kong light green skin, and then my Mexican 1980s bootleg necklace. But that is all I have for Yodas. Speaking of Dustin, he also contributed a question. He asked, why don't you have more Star Wars Hungarian bootlegs? Hungarian Luke is getting lonely. Great videos, my friend. Well, thank you, Dustin. Dustin is a great friend, and that's a good question. I do only have one Hungarian bootleg, and that is this one here. This is my Luke Skywalker without his accessories, but his thumbs are intact. It's a really nice example. It's graded 75 plus, but that's my only Hungarian. And maybe about 2 or 3 months ago, I did come really close to bidding on some Hungarian Han Solo and then a Hungarian Chewbacca from the same seller over in Hungary. They were at auction on eBay. I almost bought them. I decided not to at the time. I kind of wish I did now, but I did not buy those. But the Hungarian line is a really excellent line. They're very fragile, though, so it's very difficult to find them with thumbs intact. And oftentimes you'll see those cracked or re-glued. But the Vader is one I'd love to have. I'd love to have the Han and the Chewbacca. Leia is another one that's really pretty. But for whatever reason, I have not managed to put together any more Hungarians. I do have this other Luke Farm Boy. This is a Polish static bootleg from the 1980s, Polish bootleg Luke. And he's got that dark black hair with the blue outfit. Really cool with the silver boots. That one is graded 60. Really tough to find him in good condition. I do have another Polish Farm Boy at CAS right now, so that'll be back probably sometime this summer, just given how long they take for bootlegs. But at some point, I will definitely be adding a bootleg, maybe a Hungarian bootleg, maybe a Vader or a Han Solo, something like that. But that's a great question. The next question, it comes from Scan995. First, thank you for watching, Scan. He said, you have shown a few signed figures. Are there any figures you wish you had signed by the actor? And that's a great question. I've got 3 examples here in front of you. My Alan Harris signed Bosk, my Dave Prowse signed Vader, excuse me, and my Jeremy Bullock Philly Toy Expo that is signed. These are all Power of the Force 2 figures. This is the cheapest way I've found to find autographed action figures, is the Power of the Force 2 line. It's not a heavily collected line, and so they make great autographed items just because, you know, the actual card itself is typically not very valuable. The Toy Expo is probably an example of one that's probably on the more expensive side, and anything that's kind of a convention exclusive, things like that. And then I also recently just showed you guys the Gig Garistellari Italian Boba Fett that I have autographed by Jeremy Bullock, so that will be going off for grading fairly soon. But I do have a couple of others. I've got the Greedo that's signed by Maria de Aragon. That's at Collector Archive right now. I also have a few vintage collection signed items. But to answer your question directly, Scan, I would say that certainly Mark Hamill would be a nice one. Gerard Holm, who played Squidhead, I think that would be pretty cool. Tim Rose, who did Akbar, Admiral Akbar. I would like to get one of those. Potentially someone like James Taylor or Ashley Eckstein, who did Ahsoka Tano in the Clone Wars. Those are ones that I think would be really cool to have eventually, but that's a great question. Next, Gary Moore asks, do you have any of the vintage or TVC ships graded, and do you plan to have the Razor Crest displayed outside of the box? Well, thank you, Gary. You're a long-time subscriber to the channel, so thank you for watching all my stupid videos. First, on the Razor Crest, I did not purchase the Razor Crest. I have no room for it. I would love to have it, but I certainly do not have any room. I've got a few vintage Kenner vehicles like my land speeder that is displayed loose gridded. I do have the vintage dewback. That one is sealed in the box. I've got that collector series graded 75 plus. And then regarding your TV ships, do I have any TV ships graded? Well, yes, I do have. I've got a few. This is the Mandalorian Imperial Troop Transport. This is graded by Collector Archive Services as a 90. Really cool looking item. I still got it in the poly bag. I also have the Rogue One Imperial Combat Assault Tank. That is graded 90 as well. Very cool looking. Here we have the Slave One. This is the re-release that came out, I guess 2018, 2019. I don't have the label in front of me. This one is also graded 90 by Collector Archive Services. And then finally, I have the Walmart exclusive Imperial TIE Fighter. This one is autographed by Colin Cantwell, who was the original concept artist on the first Star Wars movie. He came up with the look and design of the TIE Fighter. This one is graded 85 plus by Collector Archive Services. I do not plan on getting any other vehicles anytime soon unless they're vintage Kenner. I just don't have any room anymore. But these are the ones that are in my collection right now. The next question comes from Berto Collection. Berto is a longtime viewer and commenter, so thank you for the question, Berto. And he has an amazing collection in his own right. I've seen his Instagram photos. But anyway, awesome collection and videos. My question is, what do you prefer to collect, the dark side or the good guys? Well, here we are. We got both groups in front of you. We got a Vader, we got an Emperor, we got a non-sonic welded Stormtrooper, Leia, my PvP Han, and a Luke Skywalker brown hair. I don't know the answer to that, Berto, but if I had to pick one, it would probably be the dark side. I love Vader, and I love a lot of the Stormtroopers and all those kind of variants and things like that. That being said, man, I love me some Farm Boys. I'm a big Farm Boy fan. So that's a great question, but I'd probably lean dark side. The next question comes from Diovo. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He said, when I was a kid, I would get a new Star Wars figure and open it and put the figure in my Darth Vader case. I never really played with him, just kept adding to the collection. Anyway, he has 73 of the original figures from the past 35 years that have not been touched, and that's amazing. Your channel has inspired me to get figs graded and preserved, so that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that, Diovo. I have begun purchasing graded figs to complete the rest of my collection, and he asked me, what do you prefer, loose figure collecting or mock, mint on card? And my answer to that is complicated. It's very, it's very complicated. I would say that in general, I think mint on cards are such beautiful time capsules to when these were available in stores on the retail shelves. This is my Tri-Logo Luke Skywalker. But that being said, with prices where they are today, I was just talking about this with Blacked Out Ewoks and with Boss Bounty. I mean, prices have gotten so ridiculous that people are buying stuff, and I'm seeing the exact same item listed that they bought in in August of 2020, and it just got resold here recently. This is now the end of January, so whatever that is, 5 months later, for 33% higher, the exact same item. So prices have gotten really ridiculous between people having more disposable income due to lack of travel and things like that. So prices for mint on cards especially have just gone through the roof lately. So I don't particularly buy mint on cards when the market is like this. I tend to kind of hit the pause button. You know, that being said, if I find a fair transaction like I did with Chris W. for my Tri-Logo R5, then, you know, he gave it to me for a very, very much a sweetheart deal. I mean, when I see something like that, I'm going to buy it. But in general, I do prefer mint on card. But that being said, I love the loose graded variants. I like collecting different variants of certain figures. This is my Luke Jedi with a blue saber. But, you know, in general, yes, I prefer mint on card figures. But I tend to keep a pretty close pulse of the market. And right now, the market is telling me that I need to hit pause on buying any vintage mint on card figures. That being said, I do have some really awesome vintage Kenner items coming back from Collector Archive Services any day now. I think there are a total of 5 vintage Kenner and Palatoy Tri-Logos that should be here, hopefully in the next week or two. Next question comes from Sean Mack. He said, I recently found you through Boss and Only One's channel, so thanks to those guys for referring Sean over to me. And Sean, welcome to my channel. I've been watching your past videos to catch up, and they are great. Well, thank you. I have not submitted any figure to be graded before. When do you suggest to get a figure graded? Older figs, rarity, price threshold, or just when you get an excellent card regardless of the above? Well, to answer your question, Sean, yes. I'm on the overkill side. I tend to grade a lot of stuff, and that's just how I roll. But I think for those that are not insane and have just a desire to grade a few items here and there, you raise a great question. And yes, older figures I think makes a lot of sense if they are tough to find, especially complete. I would call the Jawa a good example, the Vinyl Cape Jawa a good example of an item that I would get graded because they do tend to discolor over time, and they're very difficult to keep from discoloring. The Jawa is not a rare figure, but it is an expensive figure. So that's an example of one. You can grade by rarity or by just the value of it, market value of it, and that's certainly one that has a high market value, although it's not particularly rare. There's plenty of Vinyl Cape Jawas out there. I would say items like my unassembled Uze Turkish bootleg AT-AT driver. It's got the arms on the legs and the sprue, or arms and legs on the sprue, and then a non-sonic welded torso. How do you display this? There's no way to display this effectively without adding putty or something like that. And I don't want to have anything touching this. This is a fairly expensive bootleg that is worth quite a bit of money. And these sprues are very, very fragile. I would much rather get this authenticated and encased so it does not break off the sprue, and it just presents really nicely. So this is an example of an item that it's not really rare. I've seen plenty of these out there, but it's so fragile that I would get it graded. Another example would be anything kind of white like this. This is a fairly difficult to find YPS Stormtrooper. These came with the G.I. Joe weapon. And they were available in like a German comic book as a pack-in called YPS. And so this is the German YPS Snowtrooper that is a PBP figure. So this is an example of one that I would recommend getting graded. I did get the museum-style casing for this one because these white figures tend to they do tend to yellow over time, especially the torsos on these YPS figures. I've got another one that's graded AFA 85, but the torso has discolored since grading. So I do tend to grade items like that. I think that if you have a mint-on card that is in really, really good condition and you want to keep it that way and you don't want to just keep it in a sliding case, if you want to just get a sliding acrylic case, GW Acrylics makes excellent cases that would preserve it and keep it in good shape, and they are UV resistant. But if you wanted to get it graded, I think it's certainly money well spent and will do nothing to detract from the value. And if anything, it will certainly enhance the value because people know exactly what grade it's received by at least one person within one of the grading companies. Next question from Andy Garand. He says, have you ever questioned having an item graded because you know you won't be able to handle the actual item again to bring back the nostalgia you had of holding it when you were younger? Well, that's a great question, Andy, and I think that kind of speaks broadly to how people view grading. There's a lot of people that just do not like the idea of authenticating and preserving these action figures because they are handlers. They like to handle stuff and they like to pose them and things like that. My Instagram is just basically full of graded items. You know what I mean? And I don't do like character photos or action shots and things like that. There's a lot of collectors that do. That's just not something I would ever be good at. But I don't have any of my childhood toys really. I think Mr. Wampa, and I've got a B-Wing that is hanging up in my collection room that I'll take a photo of and include down below here. But I don't really have much of my childhood toys. They were basically all played with so much that they were destroyed. I think I've got a few other items here and there, like mini rigs. But that's a good question. And I think it just, like I said, it speaks broadly to a lot of folks that do not view grading as a good thing, and that's okay. And the collection world for any action figure line is large enough that you don't have to be a graded collector like I am. Most people aren't, I would say. And that's okay. This is just how I've chosen to collect. But the point is well taken, and I understand where you're coming from with it. And finally, before we wrap this video up, Cordova Limited asks, Great video as per usual, and thank you, Cordova, for being such a long-time viewer. I appreciate it. He says, my question is AFA or CAS? Well, it's obvious it seems you prefer CAS. However, could you elaborate on why? Now, I get this question a lot. And yes, I do use collector archive services quite a bit. But that being said, I love AFA graded items. They are the de facto standard and probably the pioneer for graded toys since they were the first ones doing it. UKG followed and collector archive services followed them. And so I think AFA does a lot of good for the graded toy community. The issue is that I have so many weird items. I've got this Oritet Russian bootleg Chewbacca set with the factory sprue and all that's encased, and it's such a unique item. Let me go ahead and pull it down. But, you know, AFA won't do this. This is not something AFA will do. And it just looks incredible. And I don't think anybody in the business is as good as collector archive services with regard to encasement. Their customizing and encasement options are the best, in my opinion. That being said, they do have some things to improve on. I think that their turnaround times for customs is way too long. But, you know, and in their labeling, I think they could stand to have a little bit more care with labeling to make sure that there's no typos and things. But, you know, AFA is awesome, and I've got plenty of AFA items. I love AFA. I've sent many items to them over the years. But right now, their backlog is so heavy, and their inability to listen to customers with regard to customization, unless you happen to have a close relationship with them. But, you know, I think that their etched accessory cases are probably the best on the market, but the actual figure encasement needs a lot of work. I think collector archive services wins that hands down with regard to how the actual figure is encased with the J-hooks and little stand here. This is a much more desirable case style for the figure than what AFA does. These dowels that hold the head in place, those tend to break off in shipping. So I think that they need to take the next step with regard to how they encase the actual figure. But I think that their design of their etched accessory cases are probably the best on the market right now. But AFA doesn't like to listen to me or to their customers that much when it comes to labeling. You know, you can go back and look on my channel for my PBP Lando. I don't like the way they labeled that. I just think they need some work there. But, you know, both grading companies in the U.S., AFA and CAS, are both very good, and I have no problem with either one of them. But the reason I send stuff to CAS is because they customize for me. I have so much weird stuff that AFA would never touch, like this semi-articulated Mexican bootleg that I received as a wonderful gift. You know, I can't get AFA to even look at that stuff. So I think just by default, given my wide range of collecting areas and areas of focus, that CAS fits the bill, and their customer service is second to none. That is really all I have for this video. If you have any follow-up questions, please let me know. Please be sure to like and subscribe. If I did not get to your question, it's not because I don't like you. I'm just trying to be cognizant of the length of the video, and maybe I'll do another one here in the next week or two. Thank you again for watching, and I'll be back soon.